The next thing we're going to check is crankshaft endplay. The crankshaft is subjected to axial loads, which means that along its axis there will be thrust loads moving back and forth. We need a way to control those without damaging the crankshaft or the block, but we need to make sure that there's enough clearance there to allow for expansion. So to check that, on a cast iron block I would use a dial indicator attached to the block and placed against the crank snout. I don't have that luxury again with our 2GRFE aluminum block, so I'm once again going to attach my mag base to the front main bearing cap. And what I'm going to do, instead of using the snout of the crank, is I'm going to use this first counterweight. Once I've attached my indicator to the block, touching the counterweight, I'm going to grab a pry bar or a screwdriver, and I am going to walk the crank in both directions. And you can see the indicator moving there. That's what I'm looking for. Again, I want to bring you right in tight on the dial indicator face. And what I'm going to do is move the crankshaft in one direction as far as it'll go and zero my indicator. Now when I move the crankshaft in the opposite direction and back and forth, I'll know exactly how much endplay I have. In this case, we go from 0 to 4/1000 of an inch. If I move this a little bit so you can see, our dial indicator is reading in 1/1000 of an inch, so each one of those small increments represents 1/1000 of an inch. Our spec in this case is from 1 thou and 5/10 thou to 11 thou and 8/10 thou, so we are well within our spec. Important thing to note about the 2GRFE, in the Toyota service literature, this is not referred to as crankshaft endplay. This is called crankshaft thrust clearance. So it's going to be important to know that if we're looking up specifications. We're looking at the same engine turned over and with all the internal components removed. If we were to find that our crankshaft endplay was outside of specs, either too tight or too loose, to adjust that, what we would do is change these thrust washers. Now these are selective thickness, so they come in a variety of different thicknesses. And what we would do is we would take our measurement, compare that to our spec, and if we were too tight in our actual measurement, what we would do is we would change out our thrust washers with ones that were a little bit thinner so that we could pick up some more endplay. If we found that we had too much endplay, we could install a thicker thrust washer. That would reduce the amount of endplay we had. Now, if we got to the point where we couldn't correct it by changing thrust washers, because there's only so many thicknesses of these available, we would at that point be into replacing the thrust washers and the crankshaft together.